Hey there, so with the open beta of Diablo 4 going on right now, I decided to give it a go on the Ryzen 5 5500U. Now you're looking at the game right now running with the lowest in-game graphics settings, and we are using FSR 2.0 at its performance preset. So we're already running pretty low under 1080p here, and you're looking at the game currently running with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and we are running this with a TDP of 25 watts. Now you're going to need all of this if you want to actually be able to even remotely play this game. Let me show you real quick what it was like with 15 watts. It was pretty much an absolute disaster. Really, it was the 1% lows that were just struggling like crazy. There were just noticeable stutters throughout the whole experience of trying to play like this that it was pretty much just a no-go experience. Of course, the same can be said if you're trying to play with 8 gigabytes of RAM. What you're seeing right now is not a still image of the game. It was actually just the game freezing in the middle of a fight with just 8 gigabytes of RAM, and this was happening very frequently on any battle that had any more than just 3 enemies on the screen. So it was pretty much just unplayable. But even if we turn the TDP up to 25 watts and we have 16 gigabytes of RAM, the experience isn't that great. Now again, keep in mind this is an open beta. We are still a few months away from the actual launch of the game, and we haven't gotten drivers that have full support for the game itself. But keep in mind that AMD, at least for the past year, what I've seen is that they're not really optimizing their drivers for Vega anymore. They seem to be almost exclusively focused on RDNA based GPUs in general. So because of that, I've yet to see any of these games that have been struggling to run on Vega hardware that have had any meaningful gains achieved from driver updates. Now, sometimes there will be games that are just completely broken until a driver comes out for them, but that is so rare that I really can't remember the last game that I played that was like that. So we'll have to wait and see by launch to be sure whether or not there's going to be a driver that will improve performance, but at least in the open beta, things weren't exactly great. Our 1% lows were at a range that I would consider to be less than acceptable just because of the fact that we are going consistently below 30. Being in the low 20s isn't exactly great. There's this heaviness to the game itself, and there is a lot of noticeable rubber banding in a lot of places. An average of 41 would be perfectly fine, really, if we were getting 1% lows that were in the 30s. But keep in mind, we are in the beginning sections of the game, really. I have not gotten that deep into it yet. I only sat down and played it on this hardware for about an hour and a half, and at least from the experience that I got just in the early game, it could be pretty rough in some spaces. Sometimes you get pretty noticeable 1% low stutters. Nothing that really brought down the gaming experience to the point where I just had to turn the game off, but still less than ideal. And if you're someone that is a fan of this franchise, you know that what you're seeing right now is nothing. The battles in this game are going to get intense in the late game, and if you do not have the hardware to keep up with the fights you see right now, you're going to be in for a horrible experience once you actually get into the late game. If you're looking to only experience the story, if you're just going to go with a difficulty option that is mostly focused on just having a good story experience, because when you actually start the campaign, it asks you whether you want a more combat focused experience where things are going to be more challenging, or if you want something a little bit more laid back where you can actually enjoy the story. If you go with the story option, you might be able to do it, but I still expect the later fights to get big enough that it is going to drag down the experience for you. Now, I'm going to continue to play through the game. I'm probably going to continue to play through it on the RDNA 2 based 6600H. Once I get into that later game, I will more than likely try it out again on here just to make sure that everything is as I expect it to be. But as it stands, I really would not recommend it. I mean, the game itself is $70. I don't think you should be spending that much money on a game and get this kind of experience. Now, if you're on hardware like this, $70 is probably a lot of money. I mean, $70 is a lot of money to me. I don't pretty much ever spend $70 on a video game. So I completely understand if it is just completely ridiculous and out of the question for you. And I would sincerely recommend that you probably just go try out Diablo 3 if you haven't already. It runs far better on this hardware, and there's a lot of content on it right now. This game isn't even out yet, so you have plenty of time to play that, and I guarantee you're going to get really sucked in on it. Obviously, it's an open beta. Try it out yourself if you want. If you don't have the bandwidth to download a game that is this big, because it is almost 100 gigabytes, I say don't download it. Don't waste your bandwidth. Don't waste your time, because you're somewhere with limited internet speed. It will take you a while to download it, and you might just end up being disappointed, and I don't want you to go through all of that. So my recommendation is don't even bother. Wait and see what things are like at launch. I'm definitely going to be picking up the game at launch. Spending this money on a game is going to be painful to me. I really hate spending full price on video games. I think that they are just so grossly expensive, but obviously I'm going to do it for the channel. And I know it's a title that's going to be really, really popular and a lot of people are really going to want to play it. And I want to make sure that you understand how it's going to perform on this hardware, because I really, really don't want you guys spending your money or wasting your time downloading a title like this that is just going to end up disappointing you. A lot of this just reminds me of when it was like when Diablo 3 first came out and I actually pre-ordered the title, and when it launched it was such a disaster in terms of how it performed, mostly just in the fact that the servers were so garbage. For the first few days, every time you tried to log in, it would just be a crapshoot on whether or not you would even get in, and once you were actually in, you would sometimes even just get disconnected from your own single player game because it was an always online game, similar to how this one is, though the servers seem to be holding up. But I had pre-ordered that game for $60, and within the first week of playing on there, my account actually got hacked because Blizzard was really pushing for this in-game item auction house where you would be able to buy and sell in-game items for real money. And this just created this toxic environment where people were hacking other people's accounts to gain their loot. I got my account hacked. My character was completely cleaned out. I was devastated. I did reach out to support and they actually did restore my stuff, but what they did was they actually rolled back to essentially a previous instance. So I did lose some progression, and that was just so devastating to me that I did not touch the game again for almost a decade. That said though, Diablo 3 is a far different game at this point, especially with the Reaper of Souls expansion pack that they released for it. The game is far more functional, way more fun, and a lot of that crap that I got from pre-ordering the game, spending $60, I got such a horrible experience in the game when if I had just waited, I could have played most of the game for free or just paid $20 for the expansion and had a even better experience than what I had back then. So I really hope that you don't pre-order the game. Wait for the launch. I'll let you know how it runs. I am pre-ordering this game specifically because I want to potentially save you from that misery that I went through as a kid, because $60 when you're 15 years old is a lot of money, and to spend it on a game that you cannot refund and it was a broken mess was just heartbreaking, and I don't want you to go through that. So as it stands right now, do not pre-order. Wait until launch. Let's hope that AMD finally does something on optimizing these drivers. If we can get improvements on 1% lows, that would be nice. And of course, if you are on any system with limited amounts of RAM or your TDP cannot be raised, do not touch. So again, guys, do not pre-order. I'm trying to emphasize this a lot because I don't want you guys to get burnt on such an expensive game. If this was $20, even $30, I'd say, okay, you can maybe take a gamble on that if you really wanted to. But for $70, please guys, just don't do this to yourself. By all means, if you have all of the disposable income, go right ahead. But me personally, I don't want to see you guys experience what I experienced when I was 15 at this point, more than a decade ago. Jesus Christ. But anyways, I will catch you in the next one.